And again, perfect timing because you were on this morning and you just ended, Brent.
Oh, really? Amazing technology. I wonder how I was able to switch over so quickly and change my shirt.
We're just waiting for Roku.
I'm thinking of cutting my hair and then dyeing it so that when they see newer videos, they'll think they're older videos, and vice versa. Just confuse everybody. Like,
It's funny.
Brent, you have such a pretty head of hair. I often wonder why you used to always wear a cap over that.
yeah, I just decided recently I was just going to let it grow a little bit. So now a cap doesn't fit it real well. I used to have a little bit longer hair when I was younger, and figure, oh, well, let it grow a little bit when I'm older, and get another chance again. So
Still waiting. Okay. It's ready.
ready? All right. Well, it's Sabbath, August 3rd, 2024. Thank you for joining us at Bible Explorations TV. And I want to wish a happy birthday to someone special up there. That's why I know it's August 3rd, 2024. But we're here to do a presentation this week is The Sign of Our Times. It's the Last Supper in France in history and in prophecy. And I hope you enjoy this presentation. I'm just coming from a new location, so I got to get used to a few little things. Okay, so the purpose of the presentation is to contrast 2 days in history and in prophecy and to observe the sign of the times of our generation. The first day is Thursday, April 26, AD 31, in Jerusalem, Israel. The second day we contrast that to is Friday, July 26, 2024, in Paris, France. So, the historical background: the biblical Passover originated during the Exodus from Egypt in the 15th century BC, and it's one of 7 annual appointed holy days of observation. It's found its prophetic fulfillment in Jesus Christ early in the first century AD. It has continued to be observed until this day. From its inauguration through Moses to today, totals nearly 3,500 years of uninterrupted observance. The Olympics originated in ancient Greece in the 8th century BC as a pagan religious festival honoring Zeus, with athletic competitions. Started off just with one race and kind of added more competition as the years went by. They fell into decline with the onset of the Roman Empire until being discontinued in the 4th century AD. Kind of a funny story, because the Olympics were a real competition, whereas the Romans like to have things kind of slates in their favor. Their games are more about entertainment, so they always wanted to have the advantage with the gladiators or with whatever. So in the first centuries AD, Emperor Nero competed in the chariot race. He actually fell out of his chariot, and he still got up and declared himself the winner of the race. So they kind of lost a little bit of their credibility and eventually disappeared around the 4th century AD. The modern Olympics were founded in 1896 by the French Baron Pierre de Coubertin, and they continue until today after their 1,500-year discontinuance. So a lot of people don't understand. They think that the Olympics has continued since ancient Greece, but it hasn't. It really only was revised, and it was actually founded, the new Olympic Committee and stuff like that, in 1896. And the French had a lot to do with it. In fact, the first Olympic was going to be in France, but they didn't want to wait that long, so they did the first one in Greece, and then the next one 4 years later in France. So, that's a bit of a historic background on the two different days we'll be looking at. So we're going to start off with Passover, AD 31, and the stage was set in advance. It says, it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. The same day then assembled together the chief priests, the scribes, the elders of the people, unto the palace of the high priest, who is called Capias, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. But they said, Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. So now Jesus had finished his 3.5-year public testimony to the multitudes. Now his whole focus was on this Passover. And notice as the Son of Man is betrayed, and this was 2 days beforehand, but it was so sure and so near that it was as good as done. When Jesus foretold it was sure to happen, and it was near. The chief priests who presided, they presided in all the religious affairs. The elders were the judges in all the civil matters, and the scribes, who as doctors of the law, were directors of both. So this is all of the leaders. All of the Jewish leaders were all in confederate against Christ, and they met in the palace of the high priest, which was the center of their whole unity. It said to take Jesus by subtlety. The word subtlety used to be used, for example, for finely woven material, something that you have to really, really know your materials and really have to look very, very closely to even distinguish the weave. So subtlety is something that's only distinguished by those who are kind of in the know. So they didn't want to have any attention to it, just their secret plot to kill him, and not on the feast day for fear of an uproar from the people. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said to him, What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you? And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time that he made the deal, got the money, from that moment on, he sought his opportunity to betray him. So note it's Judas saying, What will you give me? So he sought them out. And he must have believed Jesus in regard to the plot to kill him, because he went immediately over to these same guys and said, Well, what will you give me if I deliver him? He didn't have a single witness to bear against Jesus, either to convict him of any crime or even of any sin. So they couldn't take him lawfully, and even his closest associate, Judas, couldn't give them anything that they could take him lawfully. All that he could offer him was a location that they could grab him outside of the public eye at night. So it says when he sought opportunity to betray him, so his heart became fully set to do evil. And that's what happens. You once you decide you're going to do something, I'm going to have an affair on my wife. It may take 3 months, 6 months, a year, but from that moment on, your heart is fully set to do it. And that's what it was happening. That's what was Judas. From that moment on, he was fully set for his first opportunity to do it. So this is the next day. This is the April 26th, AD 31, Thursday. This is the morning. Now, the first day of the feast of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? And he gave them instructions to go into the cities and see a man and say to him, The master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. So note the Passover, unleavened bread, the ceremony starts with a ceremonial supper, ceremonial meal that began in Egypt. And it was in memorial of Israel's deliverance out of Egypt, which is really the birthday of the nation of Israel. And it's part of the seventh annual feast. It had been observed for over 1,400 years up to that time. And each appointed day was a memorial of an event, but also a prophecy or a foretelling of a future act of God through Christ and his fulfillment of his redeeming covenant with mankind. So when he said, My time is at hand, that must have sent shivers down them, because for the 3.5 years, you see time and time again where they're going to grab him, or once they're trying to grab him with ungodly hands, or this is not my hour, my time is not at hand. And now he's saying, My time is at hand. He means the time of his death, elsewhere called his hour. John 8:20, 13:1, for example. This is the Passover he came to keep, the day in history of the world that only he could fulfill. We get a little bit more detail. Luckily, this is told in all of the Gospels, but it's really important to observe this little detail here. It says in Mark, so it said, we just finished reading in Matthew, that he sent his disciples, but he didn't send all of his disciples. He only sent two of his disciples. He sent forth two of his disciples and said to them, Go ye into the city, and there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him. And wheresoever he shall go in, say to the goodman of that house, The master saith, Where is the guest chamber? So I just have to move a little something on my screen here. Sorry. There we go. Where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples. And he will show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. We know later on this large upper room was really Mark's house. And so Mark had appeared to them a few times before this. But now in this meal, Jesus is setting who he wants to be there, why he wants it to be there. So he's directing them to Mark's house. And we learn in the Gospel of Luke who the two disciples were, which are Peter and John. And we know in Revelation it says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come to him, and I will sup with him, and he with me. So he wants us to be at Mark's house. But why is he going through all this intrigue to tell them to follow this guy, do this, only sending two of them? It's to baffle the traitor, baffle Judas, by preventing him from acquiring previous knowledge of the place they're going to eat at. Why did he want to baffle him? One, his desire to eat the Passover with his disciples. He didn't want to be interrupted by Judas, knowing in advance this is where they're going to be eating. This is, come barging in whenever you want. Jesus said, with great desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. So A was his desire to eat the Passover with his disciples. B, because of his purpose, to found the new covenant ceremonial rite of his kingdom. And C, to make sure that his death was in immediate connection with the Passover sacrifice. So he wasn't, there was no selfish kind or no shrinking away from what he knew Judas was going to do. It just shows you how incredibly in tune Jesus is with everything going around him, everything ongoing, and why he set it up this way. So they would have the dinner before Judas could let anybody know the location. Sorry. A little bit of a trouble with my screen here. There we go. So now this is the evening. Now when the evening had come, he sat down with the 12, and as they did eat, he said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and began every one of them to say to him, Lord, is it I? And he didn't answer any of them specifically. He said, and he answered and said, He that dips his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. So this whole meal, this time in history has all been foretold. But woe unto the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. So even though that man is part of fulfilling prophecy and doesn't recognize themselves as fulfilling prophecy, that doesn't excuse their grievous crime. It's just saying this is what was written in advance. Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto them, Thou hast said it. So he calls him out. So notice what there's the 12 of them, and in Exodus 12, 3, 4, when this supper was initiated, there's supposed to be a lamb per one household, which was not to be less than 10 or more than 20. So they're following the law exactly. Note when it says, that they were exceedingly sorrowful, that they're actually concerned that it might be them. Like we all are. We know who we are, and we know, in the presence of Jesus. What if it's me? Like, what if, like, I hope it's not me. Like, you just sincerely know the difference between you and Jesus. And he's saying one of them is going to betray them. And he's not naming who it is. So they're not looking at each other going, is it that guy? Is it that guy? It's saying, is it I? Judas hoped to remain undetected. It says, He that tips his hand with me in the dish shall betray me. The Son of Man goeth as is written, but woe to him that the man is betrayed. Well, even this is prophetic. If you go back to Psalm 41, all that hate me whisper together against me. Against me do they devise my hurt. Yea, mine own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, hath lifted up his heel against me. But thou, O Lord, be merciful to me, and raise me up, that I may requite them. By this I know that thou favors me, because my enemy doth not, uh, sorry, triumph over me. So he's showing this because he wants them to know who's the betrayer is, so that they won't ever think that Judas somehow triumphed over Jesus. He knew it, and he exposed it, and he gave Judas this last chance, which he knew he wouldn't take, but he gave him this last chance to own up to it. But he didn't. He tried to play, is it I, all that sort of stuff. So, but this is prophetic as well, and this is all part of what's so incredible about the gospel and about the Word of God is that every detail, the more you look into it, the more it points to Jesus, and the more it points to how aware He is of everything before, during, and after these events. As they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, Take, eat. This is my body. So he's initiating this new this new ordinance. And only the Lord can do that. He's the only mediator, and only He can institute, a covenant. Take, eat. This is my body. And He took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sin. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of the fruit of the vine, until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So this is the institution of the great gospel ordinance of the Lord's Supper. And it says, um, who will have all men to be saved and to come into the knowledge of truth. There is one God and one mediator between God and men, that man Christ Jesus, who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time. So the opportunity is open for everybody, for all mankind. And that's, this is his desire. It may not meet with our response, but that's his desire. He took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples. And remember, we're going to talk about that in a second. So we're going to look at the two things, the bread and also the cup. For this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many. So first of all, on the bread, do you remember in the gospel, Jesus says to them at one point, talks about the feeding of the 5,000 and the feeding of the 4,000. He asked them how many loaves were there and how many were taken up and why they didn't understand that, but they didn't understand it. So let's just take a quick look at that. First of all, the feeding of the 5,000, there was 5 loaves and they took up 12 baskets of fragments. This was done near Bethsaida, which was a Jewish population. The feeding of the 4,000 was 7 loaves with 7 fragments taken up. And this was in a Gentile, mostly Gentile population. So the total loaves used to feed all was 7 and 5, 12 loaves, just like the 12 disciples. Remember, he's there breaking bread, at this Passover. Is when he fed the 4,000 too was right as Passover was approaching. They said unto him, Lord, evermore give us this bread. And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth in me shall never thirst. Right in the Gospel Mark, between the 5,000 and the 4,000, there's a little story that's there on purpose. And it's about the Samaritan woman who needs his help to heal her daughter. And Jesus uses this terminology. It is not right to take the children's bread, so the children of Israel's bread, and toss it to their dogs. That sounds very harsh. But her response was, yes, Lord. But even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. And he blessed her and he healed the daughter. But talking about the fragments, the crumbs. In Deuteronomy 7:1, there's 7 Canaanite tribes that are listed. That's the same number that Paul mentions that are living, in Canaan where they entered. So 7 is the Gentile nations. In both feeding accounts, Jesus takes, blesses, breaks the bread, gives the bread, so that when this Passover is fully instituted, when he's made the sacrifice, the Lord's table is now open to both Jews and Gentiles. And they didn't understand at the time, but they did later, because Paul writes about this very ceremony. He says, the bread is the body of Jesus, and the wine is the blood of Jesus. And then he says, for we being many are one bread and one body, for we are all partakers of that one loaf or that one bread. So, Paul and they came to understand what this meant. But, when he says to Peter, feed my sheep, it's through this sacrifice, through Jesus alone, that then he would evangelize the world through his 12, through his disciples. And so, the bread is about his sacrifice and about, he is the bread of life. And as far as the cup goes, it's the seal. Covenants were sealed, not signed. On the right-hand picture here, you can see this, what became like a wax symbol, but it purposely looks like blood because it originated as blood. And on the top picture, there's like a 7 sealed document. And as you break each seal, you can unravel and read more and more, so that by the time the seventh seal is unraveled, you can open up the whole document. And that's what the book of Revelation is all about, the breaking of the seventh seal, so the last generation is able to read it like an open book. So in today's, so on a covenant, there has to be a direct representative of each party represented by a mark on, on that covenant, their own seals. Today we have a signature. That's our direct representative, is our signature. And then if you look at a contract, it'll say signed under seal. But your signature is your direct representative that represents you on that contractor covenant. In antiquity, it started off being the blood of each tester. And then it became the best of the flock from each of the testers. So the blood, once the document was rolled up, they would seal it with the blood. But it had to represent both parties in the covenant. So Jesus spoke of himself in truth as the Son of God and the Son of Man. The only blood in history that equally represents both God and man in the covenant. Son of God, Son of Man. There's no other blood that's ever in history outside of the precious blood of Jesus. All others beforehand, like Moses and David and even Adam, were entered into the covenant as representatives of man, but Jesus alone is named as a mediator. And the mediator brings two parties together. And so it can only be fulfilled through him. And when we value his sacrifice in the same way that God does, and we put as much value on that sacrifice as God does of his own son, that is the atonement. That's the at-one-ment. That's when we're right with God, because it's that same sacrifice that we cling to, and that's what's required is valuing what will happen this night in history. So the blood or the cup is the seal of the covenant, and the bread is the payment of the covenant. It's the redemption. So you have the payment of the covenant and the seal of the covenant, his body and his blood, his life. That's why it's such a solemn ceremony. And he says, I will not drink henceforth the fruit of this wine till that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. And afterwards, they had sung a hymn, and then they went out to the Mount of Olives. So this is the conclusion of the ceremony. And Jesus said unto them, all of you shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. So we talk about the fruit of the vine. Remember the very first sign that Jesus was the Messiah that was given by John was when he turned water into wine. It says everyone, at that wedding, it said everybody serves the fine wine first, then the cheap wine after the guests are drunk. But you have saved the fine wine until now. And that's what this Passover was all about. There was nothing more precious than than the blood of Jesus represented in that wine or in that fruit of the vine. The hymn that they probably sang, because it was part of the tradition for Passover, is called the Great Hallel. It starts with Psalm 113, which is a short psalm, and then the 5 psalms that follow it are, they were sung by the 12. So Jesus, because Judas wasn't there anymore, Jesus plus the 11 remaining. But I'd encourage you to read because they're not very long, and you'll see how prophetic those psalms are about what was happening at that time. I can just share a short story with you. One time I had to give a sermon. I was asked to give a sermon for prison, people that were in prison. And it was supposed to be, it was the Passover. And I went there, and I, all men, of course, all prisoners all know they're guilty. And it was the most solemn, most, I can't describe it. When I first got there, some young guys were talking at the back, and a guy said, turned around, a great big guy turned around and said, "This is the Lord's house. Be quiet." And there wasn't you couldn't hear a mouse after that. So I gave a sermon about the thief on the cross and how, on the cross, there was two thieves. One was mocking him, and one said, you know, "I deserve to be here, but you don't. And can I desire to be in your kingdom." And Jesus assured him that he would be in the kingdom. So even on his death, he was forgiven by Jesus. Anyway, when those men, and I'm facing towards them, they're facing toward, when they sang a hymn, it was all men, all prisoners. I've never been in the presence of, like, it sounded like I felt like I was in the presence of angels. These men and their voices and their sincerity when they sang this hymn, it blew me away. I mean, I literally cried. It was just like, wow, I'm just blessed to be receiving this. So I can imagine after this ceremony, Jesus and the 11 singing these hymns before they move forward. And he had said, "All will be offended because of me this night. Because of this night, all of your courage will fail you because of what you see happen to me, because it was meant to be Christ alone." But he gives them encouragement. Remember, Judas isn't there anymore. After this, I will run, when I'm risen again, I'll go before you to Galilee. So he gives them a prophecy, gives them, foretells them, when this happens, you're going to be offended. You're going to lose all your courage. You're going to deny me because there can be no confusion that it's me alone, Jesus alone, that is keeping this Passover. But afterwards, I'll go before you and meet me meet me in Galilee. And I'll go to Friday, July 26, 2024. The opening service ceremonies of the Paris 2024 Olympics depicted an offensive rendition of the Lord's Supper. The segment featured 17 performers, including a child actor, among three quite famous French drag queen performers in varying states of undress, posed behind a long table. The motley group, flanked by French DJ Barbara Bush, it's a lesbian activist, transgender activist, so taking on the name Barbara Bush, was flanked on either side with, and so first of all, LGBT activists supporting a halo-like headpiece. So she's in the center, she or he, whatever, is in the center, and then the others on either side. So she's occupying the spot of Jesus depicted in Da Vinci's Last Supper painting. In the foreground is Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and pleasure, portrayed and he's really under a silver platter. They lift the platter through. So this is what's going to be served to the ones on the other side of the table, so representing Jesus and the disciples. So it's a nearly naked man, painted blue from head to toe, including his testicles being exposed and painted blue. And he's served on an oversized silver platter on the table in front of the performers, presumably for their consumption. So who is this? He's one of the 12 Olympian gods, but he's always accompanied by demons and by possessed women that give themselves over to ecstasy. He's noted, his cult is noted for excessive drinking, debauchery, accompanied by the cult of Dionysus, giving rise to the word, I don't know if I say it probably, but bacchanalia, or a party featuring drunken revelry. So, giving you the picture, on one side of the table, in the center is this you know um, halo featured performer, and then on either side, flanked, and right in front of them, under the silver platter, this blue, um, almost naked man representing this Greek god. So, as with those who secretly plotted against Jesus, the cast and stage was set in advance for the blasphemous ceremonial supper on the world stage. In the same way, they thought it could be done in a way that did not cause an uproar from the people, cunningly, subtly. Despite subsequent attempts to deny, excuse me, the proposed attempt, it can't be denied, according to both the New York Post and Washington Times. And I could go into a lot of other ones too, but the stunning admission came after the Paris Olympics already tried to deny it was inspired by the iconic Christian mural claiming on X on Friday it was just a misunderstanding. So the very first thing was misunderstanding. Then on Saturday, a Paris 2024 Olympic spokesman admitted the controversial drag show version of the Last Supper, seen in Friday's opening ceremony, was indeed inspired by the iconic Da Vinci mural, despite attempting to vehemently deny it following the first backlash. First of all, they denied it. The next day, they admitted it, and they sent out. I'll show you one in the next slide here, but they sent out to the Post and the Times these official announcements, and they both say pretty much the same thing. They say Thomas Jolly, who was the creative director, took inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting to create the setting. An Olympic spokesman admitted to the Post in a statement on Saturday, referring to the opening ceremony creative director. He's not the first artist to make a reference to what is a world-famous work of art. From Andy Warhol to The Simpsons, many have done it before him, the statement continued. So this is Saturday. Now they're saying, yes, he did it, but he's not the first, and it's no big deal. And after denying it on Friday, then on Sunday, despite alternative explanations and denials, the opening ceremony organizers issued an apology for any offense the scene caused, saying there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. Well, what religious group do you think might be offended by that? They never, probably Christians, right? And that the intent was to celebrate community tolerance. However, the statement stopped short of acknowledging it was based on the Da Vinci work. Now, Monday comes along, and the reps insisted Shelley was not portraying the world famous artwork featuring Jesus and the 12 apostles, but actually paying homage to Greek mythology and the feast of Dionysus. But as the fallout continued to intensify, the spokesman reached out to the Post, also to the Times, with an updated statement Monday, featuring an explanation from Jolly himself. The convenient, newly offered explanation is that the segment depicts a great pagan feast in which the gods of Olympus take part. Zeus, Poseidon, name them all. If you look at the images of these characters, the one in the middle with the halo, if that's supposed to be Zeus, they sure did a bad betrayal because there's no thunderbolt, there's nothing in it at all that could ever make you think that was Zeus or Poseidon or Hera or anything else. The only one was Dionysus. But if he's one of the 12, why is he being served up for dinner? Because he is one of the 12 Olympic gods. So anyway, so Jolly claimed that his inspiration for the performance was actually a 17th century painting titled The Feast of the Gods by Dutch artist Jan van Bilder, which depicts the Greek gods of the Olympics crowded around a long table. Jolly stated, we wanted to include everyone, as simple as that. Well, if he wanted to include everybody, why was everyone that's on the other side of the table all LGBT, drag queen, like, didn't seem to be all that inclusive. They actually seem to be pretty exclusive. In France, we have a freedom of creation, artistic freedom. We are lucky in France to live in a free country. I didn't have any specific messages that I wanted to deliver. In France, we are a republic. We have the right to love whom we want. We have the right not to be worshippers. We have a lot of rights in France. This is what I wanted to convey. Well, why would, if you're just doing this Olympic scene at the Olympics, why would that be such a controversy? Why would it, you know, it's obvious that, well, the truth is, I'll show you here. So here's, for example, Valerie Richardson. She's the reporter for the Washington Times. And she reports conservative radio host Eric Erickson posted a now deleted page from Searcher Paris, which is a tourism website. They've deleted it now. And this was before the ceremony, saying the opening ceremony would include a recreation of the Last Supper, another famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci against the backdrop of the Seine River. It said that in advance, before the ceremony. And Erickson said, in the face of widespread blowback, the French are choosing to gaslight the world and tell you not to believe your lying eyes. And by gaslighting, it means they do something which is absolutely, they know it's wrong, you know it's wrong, but then they try and make you feel bad that you're the crazy one for ever even thinking that and that it ever even happened. In addition, Barbara Bush, the woman or the LGBT activist who wore the Halo crown, posted on her own Instagram account a picture of the Last Supper painting next to the opening ceremony scene. I actually have seen a picture of this. I didn't want to post it. I'll tell you why in a second. But so she has the Last Supper and the scene for the opening ceremony. And what she posted was right after the ceremony, oh yes, the new gay testament. That post and painting photo were since removed and replaced with a caption, The Feast of the Gods by Jim Harris Vendel, as shown in the screenshot posted by Sarah Fields, president of the Texas Freedom Coalition. So within hours, it goes from the new gay testament, oh yes, to the Greek gods. So you can try and deny it, try and say this, try and say that, but you can't deny it. It's the absolute truth. And what they feared was the same thing that the religious leaders feared, an uproar from the crowd. They thought that they're going to get away with it. In fact, you can go back to January and look at this courageous thing they're going to do, and it's they're really committed to it, and they're trying to keep it secret. But we're not stupid, and you're trying to feed Jesus and the disciples from this Greek god of debauchery, and you think no one's going to notice. You think you're going to get away with it. It's going to be so subtle in your mind, like so subtle, like they were going to take Christ by subtlety, that only you guys would be able to have the inside joke and the new gay testament, blah blah. But you didn't count on the fact that you were too overt, and that it was obvious what you're doing. And then you try and take it back. You try and run it back and say, no, that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. And then you get mad because people call you out on it and say, what are you doing? And you deny it. Paris 2024 has also removed without explanation from its YouTube page the opening ceremony footage, with several prominent X accounts said they've been told to remove the drag queen video clips for violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DCMA. So, in other words, anybody that because they post this, they want it out there. They encourage, please post this on your site, but instead now they pull it down and say, we own the copyright for that. You're not allowed to have that footage. This one woman, X locked my account, which is formerly Twitter. So X locked my account, removed my video, said at Amuse, which has 358,000 followers. I deleted all my Olympic-related content. Losing my account isn't worth it. Well, my use clearly fits within fair use. The IOC is clearly using the DCMA as a way to silence critics. Elon Musk, who owns X, wrote on this controversy that Christians weren't saying enough. Said Christianity has become toothless, and I like Elon Musk in most ways, but Ellen, you're the one who owns X, and you're the one that is allowing them all to be shut down. And so, if you're talking about toothless, I'm looking at you, because you allowed all these things to be shut down on your forum, and they don't actually violate the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. They don't. They're in fair use. They were published fairly. They were captured fairly, and now they want to turn around and say we own the trademark. G.J. Barber, Butch, the activist performer, and Jolly, the creative director, at the center of the controversy, have now filed police complaints over relentless attacks they allegedly received online following the widely publicized ceremony. Butch lawyers saying she's endured anti-Semitic, homophobic, sexist, and grossophobic insults. I had to look up grossophobic because I never heard that one before, but I guess it's fear of fat people or heavy people. So she's suffered all these things. Here's what I say: copyright means ownership. So if they're going to claim copyright, then they got to take ownership. The problem is that they don't own it, and they refuse to own it. They own these images, but they're not allowing. They're sticking by and they're defending and all this stuff. But it was clearly a blasphemy of the Last Supper, of a solemn event with the bread and the wine that we just talked about, and a day in history that we just talked about, that they wanted to turn into this version. So they don't own it. You know what they're like? Judas Iscariot. Is it I? Is it I? Was it me that offended anybody? Did I possibly offend any religion? Is it I? Judas didn't ask that question because he wasn't sure. He knew exactly who it was. He just wanted to disguise to the other disciples that it was him. But Jesus knew. And when Judas came back with a crowd of because he was given a whole legion of men to come back and arrest Jesus, a lot of them were Romans, and they wouldn't recognize Jesus. So he said, I will point him out by giving him a kiss, a hug and a kiss. Did Jesus know what was going on? He said, do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? Let's look at it in prophecy 100 years earlier, 1793 to 1797. The cult of reason was France's first established state-sponsored atheist religion. The Festival of Reason was the largest ceremony. It was all through the country, but the largest ceremony was held at the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. The Christian altar was dismantled and an altar to liberty was installed, and the inscription to philosophy was carved in stone over the cathedral's door. Festive girls in white Roman dresses and tricolor sashes milled around a costume provocatively dressed goddess of reason who impersonated liberty. During that time, the monarchy, the Catholic Church had been overthrown just right in the middle of the French Revolution. Christianity was outlawed, Bibles were burned. This all, began at 1793. In the book of Revelation, chapter 11, it talks about this. So chapter 11, it talks about the end times. After the sixth, the sixth generation goes into the seventh, and that time will be no more. And it tells us to that point what we're supposed to do, observe the tabernacle, etc. But it tells us about the 1260 days, the 1260 days which of persecution of the church, etc., etc. And it says in chapter 11, and they, the people and kindreds and tongues and nations, shall see the dead bodies 3 days and a half, and this is of the two witnesses, um, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, shall send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood up on their feet, and a great fear fell upon them which saw them. That period may be reckoned from November 10th, 1793, when a decree issued in Paris abolished religion, and that's when the same festival came in, the new religion, the atheist religion, to June 17, 1797, when it held the French government removed the restrictions against the practice of this, which was a very short time, 3.5 years, exactly what it talked about in in Revelation 11. We look at Revelation 12 and Revelation 13. Revelation 12, 6, and the woman fled, the woman being the church, fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God that they should feed her there 1,203 score days, so the 1,260 days. Then it progresses into Revelation 13. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 600 threescore six, 666. Checking my time here. Sorry. So now I want to just point out a few things. In 1798, during the French Revolutionary Wars, French troops under Napoleon invaded Rome and captured Pope Pius VI, taking him prisoner to France, where he died in 1799. So this 1260 years, we've gone over this in the past, was from 538 AD to 1798. And remember, this call to reason was right here in the same sort of period. 1800 AD is exactly 6,000 prophetic years from Adam. So the very next year is entering the seventh day. 6 days over. If you take a day for 1,000 years, it's entering the seventh day, or the six is over. So from 1793 to 1797, during that festival we just talked about, during the time when they burned the Bibles, that's the Revelation 11, the two witnesses, 3.5 years. 1797 to 1800 is what we just talked about in Revelation 12 and 13, the Pope captivity, the persecution of those that kept the testimony of Jesus and his commandments. So beginning in like 1801, then you have the persecution begin again. So this what just happened in Paris in 2024. If you go back to 1794, that's exactly a 230-year period. And then it has a 7-year period, which goes to 2027 and 2031, which match up to these other dates in history. But each one of 2024, 2027, and 2031 is a 2,000-year anniversary of the acts of Jesus Christ. So 2027 is the sorry, yeah, I should have changed a little bit. So 2027 is 2,000 years from when his ministry started in 27 AD. 2031 is 2,000 years since 31 AD when he fulfilled the covenant. The 2024 just happens to be 2,000 years from this preceding festival of reason. So they're all kind of 2,000 years apart. And you saw how quickly in 1793, 94, up to 97, things came in, burned Bibles, and then it all ended and went to the next period. And when I look at prophecy and I look at, this window of why 230 years, is very important to understand the 230 years, because I showed you before in the tabernacle, there's 46 boards. 23 is halfway, 23 the other half. They're all 10 high, 230. And there's 46 boards in there. When you count the end boards and the little third that sticks in, there's 46.66 when you're counting prophetically. So we showed in the past, if we just looked at the boards, 46 boards, if you take the prophetic number, it's 46,666. We just take the covering that's over top of the tabernacle, 1120. Take the Ark of the Covenant, the breadth, the length, the height. It's all 1.5, 2.5, 1.5. So 1680 was the year of the flood. 4,200 prophetically, is the year that exact time when Jesus was crucified and resurrected. If you're looking in non-prophetic years, so these are 360-day years. These are 365.217 years. It's 1656, 4140, 6210. Prophetically, it's right here. If you take hours in a day, 0.46 hours or 0.46 hours is 11.04 hours or 1120 hours. And it's not coincidental that these numbers are the same, 1120, 1104, for the exact measurement of the covering. If you times that by 1.5, by 2.5, and 1.5, which are the measurements of the ark, you get 1656, 4140, 6210. 1656 is, like I said, the year of the flood. 4140, the year of the um, uh, baptism of Jesus. 6210, that's our time. Because it's all by this last minute of time. We're, and the same thing prophetically, 63. So I told you that it was 230 years, since that time. But I have told you several times in the past that we're within 2 years, with 2027, of entering the last capstone that goes on that tabernacle. And that tabernacle has foretold all of history and the days and ways, whatever. And that's a maximum period of 70 prophetic years. But it's very likely, because of a lot of other things, to be 70 years. It could happen immediately. It could happen within 3 years. No one knows. But it can't go beyond that. It's that the time is short. The time, I mean, if you look just at time in general, if you take 66666, which is the number we took up, that's the number of the beast or whatever. If I just multiply 66666 times these numbers, 1.656, I get 168, which is the exact year prophetically of the flood. By times 6666 by 2.484, that's the time between the flood and Jesus. Then I get um, anyway, I'm thrown up here, right? Don't concentrate, but I'm just saying that all of these numbers come into fruition, and we can go back and look at some of the presentations I've done. We're looking at a day in history when Jesus Christ fulfilled the covenant. And we're looking at the bread and the wine. And we're looking at, when we were reading Revelation 11, 12, 13, who gave that revelation? Who foretold those things about the two witnesses and all this? It was Jesus in the Revelation. And who was it given to? To John to record. Who was at the Last Supper? John. Jesus was so aware of everything going on and everything before him, during that time, and afterwards. So what's our response to this thing in Paris? We don't have to respond in some way where we're threatening people and doing whatever, because the response is what we're doing today, showing the truth of the covenant, the truth of what happened, and leaving it. If somebody decides I don't buy it, then that's on them, because they go the way of Judas. They go the way of, like I said, what is written is going to happen. Jesus said, what is written will be fulfilled, but woe to you who betrayed me. And you can just hope that someone did that in ignorance. But the country of France, who has the opportunity to stand up and say this is wrong, didn't. They didn't, and they stuck behind it. And the mayor of Paris now just came out, I think yesterday. So we don't need to get involved in these things. But what they're for is for us to see this window, this 230-year window, the sandwich, which just happens to coincide with the anniversary of the cult of reason, which is 3 years before the anniversary of the baptism of Jesus, which ties in exactly when the Pope went into captivity. The same 230-year period, which then is the the 3.5 years later, the the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. All those 2,000-year anniversaries are all coming. One just hit in 2024 with the cult of reason in France, same country, same thing. So I'm saying that of course Jesus knew in advance and wrote about these things so that we would see, just like he showed to the disciples. I want you to see these things so you know that no one's going to triumph over me. They're going to happen. I'm going to allow them to happen for prophetic reasons, but for you to know as a sign when the time is getting close and at hand. Remember, Jesus said, "My time's at hand." I'm saying that they're in a return. It's not, my hour has not come. I believe his hour is at hand. And when I say at hand, I don't mean today, which it could be. I mean that it could be any day, but it's not going to be a long time because all of prophecy is coming together. When we look at the past and all the fulfillments up until the time of Jesus, based on the tabernacle measurements, so that they all fit just like a you couldn't fit them more perfectly just by taking the measurements and the days and the ways of the tabernacle. And when we get to this 4140, the only measurement that's not in here, and we're going to do that next, is the times 1.5, which is the height of the Ark of the Covenant, the crown event. Well, that would be 6210. That's where we're at today. We're in that capstone is being put on within the next 3 years. So this is what we look at when we look at what Paris means to us today, what these days in history mean. You got to choose one way or the other. Is this the history? I mean, Judas tried to give the money back. He tried to, after Jesus was already being led to crucifixion, he tried to give the money back. They wouldn't take it. Of course, they're not going to take it. No, no, no. You're on our side now. We're thick as thieves. You did the thing, you did the deed. You're with us because that's the way evil and Satan works. It was too late for him. He ended up killing himself. You know, and what did he get? It was, what will you give me if I betray him? Well, I'll give you misery. I'll give you death. I'll give you everything that you don't want. When these guys planned this ceremony, they were thinking how famous they would become and how subtle this would be and how they'd be able to say to each other, wink, wink, and nudge, nudge, the New Gay Testament. But when it came, they ran. They didn't own it, no ownership of it at all. But but it also gives us the sign of the times where, you know, I didn't put a single picture in here on purpose. I described it, but I can't afford for Bible explanation to be shut down for having a copyright infringement. But that's the world we're living in today. You got to be so careful. You can speak and you can tell the truth, and there's no need for anything beyond that. No need to threaten people, do whatever. But if you can get the truth out, and then give, not, maybe some people are beyond repentance, but some people that may be thinking of defending this or whatever, might give them pause to think, you know what, I'm not going to defend that. I'm going to maybe look more into this, what it actually mocked, look more into the actual covenant, look more into the Lord's Supper, to see what's there. Maybe it's something I've missed something before that, that's time for me to look at now. And that's our prayer and that's our hope. So I uh so my time is right about now. I want to thank you for joining us in Bible Explorations. We're on YouTube. You can come watch any of the past presentations, including this one. You can go to the Bible Explorations website. We're on the Roku channel. We're on the African satellite on Instat 20 at 68.5 degrees. If you support these types of videos, and if you can like or comment on the videos, they really help the social media part of it grow a little bit. And we've talked about it in the past, but we're really at a crunch in terms of trying to this month, trying to keep that African satellite going. So if you are able to donate and help, we'd really appreciate it. The time's now, not 3 weeks from now. We got to make some decisions here pretty quickly. So anyway, thank you so much. And I will stop sharing now and have time for a couple of real quick questions, and then I think April's ready to present.
Amazing again. And it fits with this time.
Amen.
Well, Brent, they may have copyrighted it, but that picture's been on just about every magazine in the planet.
Yeah, but they can still get you for it.
Yeah, I know.
What
But
what
I
I
mean, it's,
what you do, and I was going to put some in here. All you need to do is publish the New York Post or the Washington Times, because they have the picture in there.
yeah,
So you just publish that article.
post a picture of that article.
Yeah, you can. It's right in their articles, like in the downed websites. So, but if you do it yourself, especially if it's video, it's worse if it's video because it's harder to. They have more rights to it. But I'm just saying that you don't need to, because if someone's curious now, they can go themselves and look it up and see it. So I don't
Well,
need to show the picture.
I have not included it in any of my programs, but privately I have told people that in AD 67, the army went up to Jerusalem and then backed off. That when they went up to Jerusalem, that was a Feast of Tabernacles. 1260 days exactly later on Passover, they went and destroyed Jerusalem. Now,
Okay.
huh?
I said, okay.
Now, last year, on October 7, when they attacked Israel, what day was that? That was the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah.
I would not be in Israel on Passover in AD 2027.
Yeah.
Mrs. White says that that vision is going to be repeated in much grander than it was in AD 70.
Yeah.
I have not said that on any of my PowerPoints, but I have told people that I've talked to this thing, and I'm not saying something is going to happen on Passover in AD 27. What I'm saying is you won't find me in the state of Israel.
And now, instead of putting it on yours, you put it on mine. So I'm the one that's going to be. That was smart, Keith.
Well, people that I've talked to, and I haven't talked to Sandy about this, but I did say about a month ago on one of my presentations that Israel will be destroyed again.
Well,
If anybody caught that, it's coming.
all we know is that for sure is that the time is short. We know that. I mean, it's just
Very short.
everywhere you look. And that's the thing, is that it's not a coincidence that this thing happened. I mean,